I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent. And all will be lost, all will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people, Let us all unite, let us fight for a new world, to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
Oh, welcome, folks, to the Corporation Nation radio program. It is Thursday, the 6th of February, and I'm your host, Clint Richardson. Unfortunately, we're having some difficulty raising Dr. H. Sherratt tonight. I don't know if you forgot about the interview or had enough of us, had enough of me, who knows. But we'll keep trying to get him on the line so that he can talk to everybody, and the plan was to take some phone calls for True. So, like I said, we'll keep trying to get True on here. In the meantime, of course, that means I have to impromptu just think of something to talk about. Woohoo! Well, I'll tell you, I gotta tell you about this thing I've been writing. You know, I've been having a little bit of writer's block lately. I don't know if it's just because I've gotten to the point where I don't want to know anymore, because the more I learn, the more screwed I realize we actually all are, especially when it comes to, I took out after talking to Patrick Jordan and looking over my old Prion research. I'm starting to have some revelations there that these things are being used literally to transform us from humans into something else. And now today I'm going over one of my older articles and trying to finish it up, and I'd like to tell you about it. You know, we talked a little bit about this. We talked about the concept of what a citizen is, and we talked about this other word that came along, and it's like, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense, and that was the word denizen. And I find that word to be quite fun. I think I think I finally have Trot calling in on the cell phone, so maybe we won't have to listen to me rant tonight. So I'll tell you what, I'll get True on in the next break. Hopefully, he's calling from his cell phone. But I was going over some words today, and that brought me to actually look up what Lincoln actually was saying back in, 1958 through about 1964, the time of the Civil War, the time that so much was changing, all of the Reconstruction, as they called it. And we're always pointed to the things that make all of our presidents seem like heroes. I abhor slavery. Really? Well, then why did you write this in 1958, Mr. Lincoln? Because it's obvious to me that the goal of the Civil War, which should be obvious to most people by this point, the goal of the Civil War was not, of course, to end slavery. That was actually a thorn in the side of the president, for obvious reasons. I mean, you had the North and the South split and opposed. But it's not because they were opposed. I mean, they still had slaves in the North. Most of the presidents were slave owners. It wasn't that, it was just a way of life. No matter what your opinion of it is, it's just fact. It was the way of life. Interestingly enough, when they define the words colony, of course, colony is actually defined as a plantation. Colony is a company or a body of people, so think East India Company. A company or body of people transplanted from their mother country to remote province or country to cultivate and inhabit. Of course, inhabit is a legal term. Gives you certain rights and privileges, but not as a free man, only as a citizen or a subject. And remaining subject to the jurisdiction of the parent state as the British colonies in America or the Indies. That's the definition of colony in Webster's 1828. A colonist is simply an inhabitant of a colony. A colony is actually a plantation. A plantation is actually defined in two different ways. One, in the United States and the West Indies, is a cultivated estate or a farm. A farm, of course, goes on to describe a farm as a land worked as a tenant, of course, not as the owner of the land, but an estate or a tract of land that is that the labor is performed by the tenant or quote-unquote owner of the land. Whereas plantation is actually applied to tracts of land occupied and cultivated in the states only where the labor is performed specifically by slaves. Very interesting. So, pardon me. Even the words, even the laws were set up in a certain way, of course, depending on whether you were a farm and you were the slave working the farm, or whether you were a plantation tenant and you had slaves working the farm for you. And of course, the farms up north could also have indentured servants and all that. So, I mean, really, what we're talking about is just a company. It was a corporation of the King of England, the Crown of England, that came over here and set up different colonies or plantations, basically. The inhabitant is a dweller, one who has a legal settlement. A person, the town or parish, a subject to that town or parish. So, and the other word is resident. Of course, we've discussed what a resident actually is. So, really, there was no time when men on this country were free, is the point. Resident in the common law, canon or common law, is the abode of a person or incumbent on his benefice. And it is, resident stands in opposition to non-resident. This is one of the things we're trying to get across to people is you don't want to be a resident because that's a legal status. It doesn't mean that you own your home. It means that you've registered it and you're just a resident. Of course, we all sign up to be residents in the United States, which is just absolutely foolish. Benefice. What is benefice? Well, it's a benefit. Okay, you get to live in your home as a benefit of being subject to the United States jurisdiction. In old times, it was fee or feudal. And in new times, basically, we've got the same thing. A fee simple, and estate on land. A farm is a tract of land leased on rent reserved and let to a tenant on condition of his paying a certain sum annually or otherwise for the use of it. So, all these farmers out there, no wonder California can turn the water off. No wonder farms are dying to get subsidies from government just to stay open. They don't even belong to the people. People don't have a choice. They're tenants. Even those big farmers out there, they're just tenants. With residents, they get a benefice or a benefit to be a farmer on the land. That's it. They're still part of the colony, but their plantation just happens to be called a farm because there's no slaves working. We pretty much get rid of the plantations, and now all we have left are varying forms of farms. We being the cattle. All right, folks, we'll see if we can get Shrew on the line to take some questions. Stay with us.
guns? Did you hear the falling bombs? Did you ever wonder why we had to run for shelter when the promise of a brave new world unfurled beneath the clear blue sky?
Look, Mummy, there's no place.
Chaos theory, hurricane control, advanced cloud sea, massive ionospheric heaters, storm-absorbing supergels, nanoscale weather machines. All of these technologies exist in some form today.
Look, Mummy, there's no plane up in the sky.
Goodbye, blue sky.
Well, folks, we had him and we lost him. We had him and we lost him, and now we're getting a busy signal. Apparently he's in an area away from home that is not getting very good signal, so we'll continue to try to connect with True. I apologize for that. Yes, the wonders of live radio, yes. Hope you enjoyed the 2 days we did have with him. I mean, he's a fantastic guy, lots of information. One thing I didn't get to ask him was about his investigations into a company called Stratfor, which I was really interested in because I hear that quite a few of the more, I guess, infamous or famous radio show hosts out there might just happen to be connected with Stratfor down there in, well, where else but in Texas. I was really interested in getting his information on that because he had recently tried to throw a protest here at the NSA and found out that the guy who ruined his protest, which happened to be a former mayor of Salt Lake, happened to be also a Stratfor, I guess, agent, if you will. Apparently it's quite a popular place to be a member of if you're in this particular line of, well, shall we say, entertainment. Although, I don't call what I do entertainment, just reality. So, looks like we'll just keep trying to get True. I really apologize. In the meantime, we do have one caller, which is Drew in Canada. I don't know if Drew wants to get on without True, but unfortunately you're just stuck with me. So welcome to the show, Drew.
Hi there, Clint. How are you?
Very good, very good.
I'm the guy who runs the archive for you.
Much appreciated.
And,
my archives. Go ahead.
One of the main things I wanted to ask True was how Don Nikoloff is doing. If he's okay, if he's not going to be coming back on the radio.
I know. I haven't heard from Don in a long time either, but we'll certainly find out. I know they were very close.
Yeah.
Those are buddies, really.
Oh, they're really good buddies. And if you do get True back on, he used to tell this amazing story that he had a package that was given to him that he kept in his file for years. He finally looked at it, and it was all about who killed JFK, and he sent the files to John Kennedy Jr.
Yes.
And 3 weeks later, he was dead.
Next thing, there was a plane crash.
Yeah, and he's got
he's got all kinds of those kind of stories that. Yeah, it's pretty incredible stuff that he's been had his fingers in.
You were asking about Alex and Stratfor. Yeah, there's a really good radio show out there that does an investigation into it, and Alex has several people from Stratfor working for him now. So.
Well, I don't think I said the name Alex, but that would certainly be one of the names.
Well, I'm sorry. The mouse from Texas, then, shall we say.
Hey, yeah, it's good. It got me off the hook. I'm sure people knew who I was talking about.
Yeah.
What's that show?
Pete Santilli, who also happens to be connected to the intelligence services. So,
that's interesting.
The Pete Santilli radio show, he did it last fall.
Yeah, I got to be honest, man. I don't know who to trust. It's funny because before I even got on this station, there were certain former hosts here, or at least one that first thing they said was, "Oh, I'm I don't know, some kind of disinformation person because I tell the truth about the Federal Reserve. I go against the grain and actually look at the law and what the Federal Reserve actually is. Therefore, I must be a disinformation agent. Yeah. So, I gotta say, I really don't know who to trust anymore, and I say that as both a listener and a host. I don't know who to trust out there. And
I don't either, but
it's
chances are, if they talk about Kafirs, they're probably on the level.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to think so. That's one of the, one of the hidden, the open secrets out there, definitely. But it's just so hard to know. I really.
It's really hard keeping track of who's who.
Well, and this, I'll be honest. This is why I keep saying, look, there's never going to be any kind of revolution. As far as I know, people are hoping and people are wanting to somehow get organized. But every organization I've ever been in, including We Are Change, and both on the local level and on the national level, gets co-opted, gets corrupted, something happens where it's just not a viable body anymore. So I just don't believe anymore that there's such a thing as a quote-unquote revolution, except in the individual. This is why I'm always trying to push people to really be aware of all these groups, from the NRA to the, InfoWars, joining any kind of groups, Oath Keepers. All of these groups, they have no track record of actually doing anything. They're organized, and yet they have not done absolutely one thing, nor can they do anything because they're not in the political process. They're not true lobbyists. They're not true, so I say that the only revolution is going to happen in the mind, and it's going to happen both religiously, spiritually, and politically. It's only going to happen in the individual. If you grasp onto some of these groups, then I'm afraid you're going to get burned, unfortunately.
Yeah, the revolution is between our ears, for sure.
Do we have Dr. A. Truott on the line?
Hi, Clint. Hi, yes. I'm sorry, Mike. I was looking at 8 o'clock Utah time. I was not expecting it to be this early. No problem, though.
All right.
Hello?
Well, we had a tough time getting you, but welcome to the show. Hey, Drew from Canada is on the line, and he was calling in to actually ask you a question, but he got stuck talking to me.
Well, hey, that's always a plus, Clint. You're a man of great wisdom and thoughts, of course. But hi, Drew. How are you?
Great, Dr. Watt. Welcome to the show. Thank you very much for coming on. And it's a pleasure and a real honor to talk to you. Can I ask you how your friend Don Nikoloff is doing?
Don is he's laying low. He's physically and his physical health has been pretty bad since he was attacked. Most truth tellers that really know what's going on, there's a whole array of weapons that are used, and there's very little doubt he's been targeted.
He certainly has.
He's doing well. He's hanging in there. He's just kind of treading water, so to speak.
Okay, well, if you can tell him there's a lot of people praying for him.
Thank you. I'm sure he would appreciate hearing that.
Okay, and the other reason why I called in, you used to tell this incredible story about a package that you kept in your files for years and years, and you finally opened it, and it was about JFK's murder, and you sent it off to John Kennedy Jr.?
That's correct. I've memorialized all this in my I guess you can call it my memoirs. It's a nonfiction book that I actually have a literary agent that works with me, and she read the manuscript and flat out. First of all, it's very hard to believe, but it's absolutely true.
Hey, it's true. I'm gonna cut you off right there and give you a full spectrum after the break here. Stay tuned, folks.
First of all, let me take just a moment to thank you for allowing me back into your homes. If this is your first time with us, let me extend a personal invitation. Let's build a happy little cloud. Let's build some happy little trees.
All right, folks,
there are no limits here.
We're the Corporation Nation here with Dr. H. Rott. Now, Dr. Rott is sort of in the middle of nowhere, traveling back to Utah, somewhere in the great state of Wyoming, in fact. And so he's on his cell phone, and I was talking to him over the break, and I'll just keep him another half an hour, and we'll probably maybe reschedule this for next Friday when he can be on a safe landline, no radiation pulsing through the air and through the ear. So, Dr. Ott, first of all, what exactly did happen to Don Nikoloff? I haven't talked to him in a couple of years now, or listened to him. I know he's not on the radio anymore. And then please tell us about the JFK thing.
Well, yeah, I met Don Nikoloff through our mutual friend, Don Harkin, and those of you that are in the Awakeness movement, Don Harkin was he died very, very prematurely. He put out a very, very informative newspaper called the Idaho Observer. I mean, really a major source of unedited, pure, unadulterated truth, okay? Now, I met Don Nikoloff through Don Harkin, and I was with Don many times personally. He lived up in North Idaho. Don actually was attacked in a very strange manner. He'd had a number of threats made against him if he didn't shut down the newspaper, and but Don just kept plugging away. You know, he never wanted to be intimidated at all, and.
By the way, actually, it's true. We just had Ingrid Cassell on the show on the 28th of January. So that was, for those that don't know, that was his wife.
That's exactly right. And she's just an absolute sweetheart. I think the world would be very close friends with her. So anyway, yeah, Don was out chopping wood, and he felt like he got hit with a spider bite. He got just, how it pinches and ouch. His wood pile was kind of had a bunch of insects, and he thought nothing of it. But actually, as he went in and looked, there was a mark, a puncture wound, okay? And it didn't really act like a spider bite, but shortly after that, within weeks, if not, I don't think it went into months, he got extremely ill, was diagnosed with a very lethal form of leukemia, and passed away quite rapidly. And Don Nikoloff and I, we talked to him while he was quite ill, and verified what was happening. And Don's had the same threats against him as Mr. Harkin did, and I got to tell you, I've had my share as well. So. We can't live in fear. We just got to keep going forward and just, at least for me, I put my faith in Jesus Christ, and whatever happens, it happens. And I just try to enjoy life and yet just tell the truth. That's so much of the world can be improved by just being honest, just telling the truth and not hiding, and not like your show says, Corporation Nation, and that's what this world is. It's run by corporations, and they don't tell the truth, do they, Clint?
No, and even the men even the politicians are acting in corporations, and they're not even themselves.
Well, yeah, getting back to the caller Drew's question to me, yeah, the story sounds so incredible. I found this file. I didn't know what to do with it. I just kept it basically in my business safe for safekeeping, because I couldn't really dispose of it, yet the information in the file was so gut-wrenching, if true. And I emphasize if it's true, because anybody can write and put together fictitious files like that. And so I waited for a special time. I was interviewed for a feature cover story on George Magazine. I was exposing some of the lies and falsehoods being put out by the largest hog factory farm in the world, the Circle 4 Farms, which is now, by the way, owned by Red China completely. And so I was exposing this and got the attention of a number of large periodical magazines. I interviewed, did a story with Wall Street Journal. I also had a blip in U.S. News and World Report also. Then, of course, George Magazine. And so the editor of George Magazine and his crew flew in their private aircraft and came to little Cedar City, southern Utah, and spent the entire day just getting a handle on this incredible hog factory farm, this huge metropolis of pork, okay? And it wasn't until after the photo shoot and the interview was concluded, we were having a steak dinner at a very nice steakhouse, and I said, look, excuse my ignorance, but I really don't know what George Magazine is, because I don't subscribe to it, I've never read it. And so the fellow handed me a copy, and looking at the title page and the front cover, I found it was, of course, owned and run by John Kennedy Jr. And so I asked if this gentleman knew John Jr. Says yes, of course, he's my very close friend since boyhood. And I had to ask the question: does he believe the Warren Commission report? What is his feelings about the assassination of his dad? America's vision of icon of John Jr. as a little toddler, out saluting the caisson as the funeral procession, goes by. And the answer was, of course, no, he doesn't believe it, but there's not a lot of proof. The Warren Commission has done a very good job of covering their tracks. So the file that I had just happened to deal with that very subject matter, and it was file number 5 of something called the Gemstone series of files. I have no idea what the other files contained, how many there were. I just knew that this one was labeled Gemstone number 5. And when I asked this editor, I said, what do you know about the Gemstone files? And he immediately said, well, what do you know about the Gemstone? I says, well, I just happen to have what's called file number 5, and it has to do with Kennedy's assassination. Long story short, he immediately got a copy and got it into John's hands, and there was justice wanted to be done there, but it never happened. I explained all that in the show before, and so I was going through it. There was my literary agent. I wanted to kind of publish this story, and she suggested that I would be better off to publish it as a fiction story. And I said, no, I'm not interested in writing fiction like that. That's too important. You see, Americans, Clint, you know this, they're so brainwashed by the mainstream media that they just can't get a handle.
True, did we lose you? Oh, well, darn it. Well, suffice to say, the famous plane crash incident with the son of JFK, of course, happened just shortly after the acquirement and investigation into that Gemstone number 5, a document that was sent that way. Oh, to see, True, did we lose True? Okay, well, I think it's unfortunately a lost cause. Drew, do we still have you on the line? All right. Well, appreciate the fact that at least Drew got his question answered. So I think we're going to go ahead and probably just reschedule True for the 14th. So if you want to mark that on your calendars, we'll have a nice clear landline to call in with, and if he calls back, great. If not, okay. He also said he had a couple of acquaintances or businessmen in the car that he was up there doing some business, trying to open a shop. So I won't bother him anymore. He's such a good guy. But of course, that leaves me in the position to fill the next hour and a half. So we'll go ahead and continue to take calls if anyone wants to call into the show. Of course, I can never, ever remember the number. I always have to look it up. Phone number for the show is 1-800-313-9443. And with that, we'll go to our next break. We'll come back. Stay with us.
But if you think you need guns to stop tyranny, then what you waiting for? We've already stripped you of your liberty, privacy, civil rights, and dignity. You want some more?
He's a rebel and a runner. He's a signal turning green. He's a restless young romantic, wants to run the big machine. He's got a problem with his poisons, but you know we'll find a cure. He's cleaning up the systems to keep his nature pure.
Well, welcome back to Corporation Nation, folks. So sorry for all of the confusion and bad connections and all that, but we'll definitely reschedule Chew for next Friday. In the meantime, we'll take some phone calls. We've got Fred in Michigan. Welcome to the show, Fred.
Hey, Clint. It's a sign of the times when the atmospheric HAARP conditions seem to always interfere with key interviews.
Yeah, that was a good thing about pre-recording because it wasn't live, so there was no one interfering with all that stuff.
Oh wow, that was those were hours for the ages right there. I assimilated every minute. So my brain cells were in overdrive as I was listening in here. When I heard the initial reports of Junior's plight with his flight plight, I instinctually knew. Did you ever see the Parallax View with Warren Beatty?
Parallax View? I don't think so.
Check that out, man. It was a movie that came out after the Kennedy murders. I think it came out maybe, 70, 71. The Parallax View. And believe it or not, coincidences, there does exist a Parallax Corporation.
What kind of corporation is it?
You got to see the movie, man. I can virtually guarantee if your synapses are functional, they're going to be synchronously firing as you watch that movie, Parallax View. Warren Beatty does a stellar acting job. It assimilates various elements of the Kennedy murders, sort of metaphorically, but it's unmistakably based on their murders.
It's funny. I've never been one to follow all the Kennedy stuff. I know, all the assassination stuff and all the. It's a little too overwhelming for me because it was before my time, to be perfectly honest. And I know, of course, it's an important point in history, but at the same time, I mean, it seems to me like that type of stuff happens almost, I don't know, daily, monthly, or yearly, just on different levels.
Paul Wellstone, the senator from Minnesota, who publicly declared his non-allegiance and vehement opposition to the Skull and Bones Slot and crime family of Crawford, Texas. So he had a plane event. In the same, I think they were separated by maybe 4 weeks. Him and a guy by the name of Carnicom, the governor of Missouri, who was opposing John Ashcraft. And John Ashcraft was the guy who was opposing the re-election of Carnicon as governor of Missouri. Of course, Ashcraft went on to become one of the more infamous, notorious FBI directors. So anyhow, they each had a plane event, a life-ending plane event in that same, well, one month, maybe 6 weeks. It was, so anyway, on the day of JFK Jr.'s demise, the initial reports regarding weather, because he was blamed on the weather, you see, and the fact that he had a cast on his leg. And I suspect it was the wrong leg. And even if he did have, I'm not quite certain there are that many pedals in a plane that have to be, strategically activated.
No, actually, if you see those guys flying the planes, as far as the throttle itself, you'd be surprised how little they actually touch the thing. It's pretty amazing, really. I got the opportunity to sit up in the cockpit a couple of times when I worked for the airlines, and it's pretty fascinating. When I'll tell you what, when they take off,
yeah,
they basically in those big jets anyway, they basically just barely touch the stick, and the whole thing just lifts off the ground. And for the most part, it's on autopilot. So it's a little coincidental, maybe too coincidental that so many people die in these kind of plane crashes. But
and you know what? These people, you gotta believe they've got an ace team of maintenance. Crew chief, crew team. These marvels of flight. They're exceedingly well maintained with the most advanced lubricants, etc. And with JFK Jr., the initial reports were that it was a bluebird day on the East Coast. There was just cloudless blue skies. I'm not sure it was the same where he embarked. I think it was Washington, D.C. or somewhere else in that area. But where he was due to land, it was a bluebird day. And then, subsequently, once it happened, then that was all deleted. It's kind of like the events with respect to the Hurricane Katrina, when a couple credentialed physicists came on Coast to Coast AM and said, "Hey, Fred Bell was one of them, by the way, who died rather mysteriously after."
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So he comes on, another guy comes on, and I even got in. I was astonished. I was able to get in. Because they actually, a woman called in who was viewing the scenario in real time on CNN, and she said, amazingly, all of a sudden she sees this, like, red laser beam on the TV screen. And so she calls up and says, what's going on with that laser beam that I'm seeing on my screen? And they pretended it wasn't there. Well, each of these guys said, well, yeah, it was there, and that's part of the technology of diverting, manipulating, directing the energy of the storm. And they each said it could be effectively disrupted and terminated. So I had a chance. It was a subsequent broadcast, and I brought this up, whether it was Fred Bell or the other guy, and they said absolutely that it's a manufactured event with this technology. It's Star Trek technology. Now, Judy Wood has done that stellar work called "Where Did the Towers Go?" and Ventura's on record saying, "Yeah, I bought the scenario that it was nanothermite explosives, but it just so happens that the artifact byproduct of a nuclear electrogravitic technology that Judy Wood describes, the breakdown artifact of that process is, in fact, a version of thermite. And she goes on to explain extraordinary anomalies involving vehicles that are fried.
Oh, I'll tell you, when I saw those cars and their engines were fried out of them and the frame was still intact, I was like, oh my God, that's absolutely...
And then, like Ventura said, he never knew of any explosive material that vaporized human DNA. You know, you got all these people that were vaporized at ground zero, no DNA recovered, but abracadabra, oh man, looky here, right here, I'm an FBI guy, pristine passports of a couple of trips. There they are, man, miracles do happen.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for the call, my friend. We're going to go to our long break here, and we will take Ryan and Eric in California. Yeah, like I said, man, I lived in New York at the time, and I got to tell you, 9/11 was my moment of turning around, waking up, if you will. We'll be back, folks. Stay with us.
Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel. Who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite.
Welcome back, folks, to the Corporation Nation radio program. I'm Clint Richardson, your host. Guest today was supposed to be Dr. H. Sherratt, but alas, we had some connection issues, and so we're going to reschedule that for next Friday. Always good to talk to True. Since we were going to have this be a call-in show, we'll go ahead and take some more calls. Phone number is 800-313-9443 to call the station. Next caller is Ryan in California. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Yep.
Hey, I wanted to real fast thank you for restoring my confidence in calling in. I get kind of excited on the radio, and a lot of times I'm rushed so quickly by hosts that I just don't call in, and it's just because they're trying to stay on topic and get moving. And anyway, you're a very patient, listening person, and I want to respect that about you.
Oh,
so
thanks.
All
right, next caller. No, just go ahead. I'm kidding.
Sorry, someone's trying to call me, but anyway, real quick, my battery's about to die, but I had a friend. My friends told me that they went to the church center there where the Salt Lake Temple is, the visitor center, and they ran into a guy in the ancestry department or the genealogy department.
Yes.
And this guy was British, a young man, and he had a calling in the church, a special calling, and this was that if you told him your name, your last name, and your parents' last name, he could, by memory, probably, who knows how exactly, but trace you to a royal bloodline family, and this was very interesting for me to hear because I wondered why would it be so important to find this out. And, I'm putting these little pieces of this puzzle together over the years, and hearing you talk about the bloodline of, the leaders of this world and this kind of odd thing going on with these blue bloods, so-called. Anyway, I wanted to give you that piece of information that there's someone going around doing that, and it's considered a spiritual gift among ancestry
Well, it
department.
sounds like he's just got the gift of autism to me. But
Right.
well, and that is true. And I don't want people to think that you're not if you don't go in your genealogy that you're not going to find some trace of some remnant of part of a royal family. And most people, if not all people, will be able to find that they have some relation. The difference in what I'm talking about and what they're talking about is the blood. In order to be part of for instance, of the Order of Charlemagne here in the United States, which is a specifically of the blood of the Charlemagne kings, you must literally have the blood. Period. It's not just a relation. Everybody's related. You must have the blood, and that's the big difference.
Right. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts later on about the prion altering man. I have been concluding. I called you in when you were talking to Deanna Springola about a little bit about sacred geometry, and I mentioned that it really, the geometry itself is neutral, and what it signifies is something pretty interesting. But it is what I have encountered, and someday I'll speak more on this. Maybe I'll send you some information. That the image of God found in His creation is what's trying to be. I mean, basically, God creates and Satan imitates and seeks to.
It's talking about the golden mean.
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, what I understand is that Satan tries to recreate the creation in his own image, which is a sort of an image that bleeds, which allows it to be fed upon. It bleeds energy or soul or essence, and the changing of you can go from you can talk about Monsanto or the fallen angels before Noah. This altering of the image or the seed or the original creation is somehow an abomination and alters the image of God in creation, and is kind of results in the creation being destroyed or cleansed, which seems to happen cyclically through the Bible and through the history of the earth. And anyway,
I think you're seeing it firsthand. I think you're in that cycle. I think you're at the end of that cycle, actually, because at this point there's an exponential growth of this type of technology, and new patents come out every day, perfecting and literally improving upon the way that these things not only enter and adjust, flip on and off switches, attack the epigenome, attack the very nature of the DNA structure, and literally, like I said, it is altering certain aspects of humanity. And when you think about it, we have the same DNA spirals as the nematode worm. Okay, the only difference is that we have our DNA is activated in certain ways that makes us human. And that's a fascinating thing when you think about it. So yeah, the Bible being mathematical perfection, or life or God being mathematical perfection, or the golden mean, the golden rule, then if you think about that in that way, and by the way, this is very much what, if you get into Masonry, this is very much what they actually get into. But yeah, if you think about that, and then you think about the ways that you can manipulate that, as you say, to almost make a carbon copy, but of course a carbon copy, it's missing a few carbons. It's not a perfect copy. It's not a perfect replication. And I think the numbers 666 and numbers 777, numbers 888, when you get into the Jubilees and all that, those are a very, very significant part as frequencies of the whole thing, of how the healing frequencies of the body as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look, you've seen those studies on where they are able to essentially change like a frog DNA to a salamander DNA by the presence of one being holographically or imprinted on the other, and then the eggs hatch into a salamander rather than being a frog. Essentially, the energy and frequency are what is turning on or off these switches in the DNA. And I mean, if you talk about God as, either being or having this energy or the command of this energy to perpetrate the image of order and growth, and then evolution being more of a second-hand aspect to what we observe. You know, that things are really dictated from further up into the heavens as to the progress and the development of species, you know, by divine intent, and then it makes more sense that man takes that power in an unrighteous way and tries to use it for greed, essentially, to limit, like, the reproductive ability of plants and animals and people to become all under control of their own, you know, basically they set themselves up as sovereigns over life.
Well, yeah, and that's the dangers of all this. That's the real dangers of what we talked about, which was Patrick Jordan, by the way, is going to be back on the show on the 12th, so be sure and tune in to that, because we're going to be talking about other things besides prions, rabies being one of them, concept of what rabies is and how rabies can literally be used to I got to tell you, I asked Patrick if he's actually interested in making a movie, because we were so on the same course. Rabies basically being something that can be used to make zombies. In fact, they use it in zombie movies, and they do that for a reason. Ryan, you're welcome to hang on until after the break, or we'll go on to the next caller. Stay tuned, folks.
Scientists have been battling to understand what this unappealing object is all about. What the object is all about.
Information in the form of energy streams in simultaneously through all of our sensory systems in the form of energy. All of our sensory systems, and then it explodes into this enormous collage of what this present moment looks like, what it feels like, and what it sounds like. It explodes into this enormous collage, and in this moment we are perfect. We are whole. We are whole, and we are beautiful.
It appears rather gruesome, wrinkled like a walnut, and with the consistency of mushrooms, like a walnut.
It is the most mysterious part of the human body, and yet it dominates the way we live our adult lives. It is the brain.
I can't tell you enough, folks. I can't tell you enough how important it is. And I tried, you know, I made my efforts, I made my digs, put out my research. Patrick has done the same. Patrick Jordan. I'm telling you folks right now that prions, these little protein structures that aren't alive, they can't be killed, they can't be burnt, they can't be irradiated, they are practically indestructible, and they are activated by certain frequencies, and as the patents say, deactivated by certain frequencies, which is why I'm so much pushing the work of Rife and others, including Dr. Ott, who is also into that type of technology and has his photon sound beam that I highly recommend people look into. The prion is literally the cause or the causal reaction of most of the diseases we have, from cancers to AIDS to the symptoms of AIDS anyway, to all of the dementias, which I read a pretty long list of dementias, but your Alzheimer's, your most popular ones, your Alzheimer's, your Lou Gehrig's, your Lewy body's dementia, all of these being caused in part or in whole, not sure about that. I know it's at least 50% of the cancers out there rely on the protein structure being mutated by these prions, because they actually protect the cell from the cancer. And that's the great thing about patents, is because in order to file a patent on something, you actually have to tell the truth. You have to say, this is what happens when a prion goes in and affects the body, and it looks like Alzheimer's. Ask the doctor. Doctor doesn't know what the heck it is. He calls it Alzheimer's because those are the symptoms. But in truth, prions eating through the brain, or prions eating through some other part of the body to cause some other kind of paralysis or other type of dementia. This is what's happening. It can be stopped probably tomorrow if people knew about it. And it wasn't just some science fiction freak show that was happening within the scientific and medical community, completely out of touch with most medical doctors, have no idea these things exist and that they're actually causing. Because again, diseases are mostly unknown. Doctors do not know what caused disease. They punch in a key and the computer tells them what symptoms to treat. That's it. And they get kickbacks from their pharmaceutical buddies. If we could focus and get people to actually insist on actually looking into prions, we could pretty much get rid of such things as Alzheimer's and ALS. Autism, I believe, is also one of the things that has to do with prions, although I haven't been able to explain that one in part of my ongoing research. But yeah, I got to tell you, prions are it, man. And people in the industry are actually afraid to talk about them. They've heard they're a hoax, or they'll say it's a hoax. But patents don't lie. I mean, that's the God honest truth. Anyway, back to my caller. I believe it was Ryan. Ryan in California. You still there, buddy?
Yeah. No, I'm enjoying. I'm looking forward to this more information about prions. It has stumped me since I heard in 1996 the mad cow disease guy, the mad farmer, mad rancher. I heard him talk in person.
Yeah.
In Utah, at the Good Earth there in Orem, in the basement when I was a teenager, and I heard him explain, this. The first time I heard of it, this prion that couldn't be killed, and actually has infected the wild deer population of America because of these biologists graduating from college going out there dumping this feed out in the snow, feeding the wild herds to help them survive the winter, has basically infected the wild populations of deer.
Well, I'd say that's the question that I have not been able to answer, because it seems like it's an ancient enemy. It seems like it's something that's just been dormant, basically, until the people of New Guinea started eating each other's brains as a delicacy. Okay, I didn't want to let the food go to waste, but then here comes Patrick saying, no, they actually infected those people. Purposely. Yeah,
it's sort of like a chicken or the egg thing for me, because I keep finding, I study the mystery schools a lot. There's, Manly P. Hall wrote a book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Uh-huh. And it's interesting to read and study these guys' own narrative on history and why the pyramids were built, the Sphinx, the purpose of, controlling and creating whole religions to augment society and history, and the kind of a backdoor narrative to what a lot goes on. And I just study it because it's fascinating to me. I don't like, being lied to like you, and I like to know what. I'm not offended to learn what these guys have to say about history. And when I find things like terms like Golem and Frankenstein and things and zombies, these things used in very old literature, I find this sorcery being done, high sorcery being done repetitively through history against an ignorant masses. My people perish for lack of knowledge.
Well, and the other aspect to that is I don't think for a second that the timeline of human intelligence that's put forward to us is at all accurate. I mean, I look at ancient technologies, and I know for sure the pyramids weren't built just because they liked triangles. That's a huge energy suck right there. I mean, that is a huge energy transformer. I mean, it's obvious.
It's a geothermal conductor.
Right. I mean, you go to Michael Telligen's work in South Africa there. I mean, it's incredible technology that's 40,000 years old. You're going to tell me that men were cavemen back then, right? So how could they possibly have been messing with frequencies all the way back then? No, men weren't cavemen. I mean, at least not in that timeline.
Well, there is something interesting here that these pyramids are essentially temples, and you find them all over the world, and you've heard it said in Scripture, your body's a temple, and the temple's supposed to be a dwelling place of God. You're supposed to keep it pure and take care of it for those reasons, so that, you could cultivate whatever, a proper spirit, the house of God. And these temples were sort of an externalization or a Luciferian attempt, to reach heaven and take control of this gateway. And your body actually is built in a way that can geothermally conduct the same way that the pyramids do. And they were also covered with granite in the past. If you look up, Marcel Vogel, who did crystallography, his work was owned by IBM, but he was able to download the image of the Mona Lisa or any image really into this little cut triangle crystal and then project it onto a wall. And this ability to download information into crystals is what is the foundation of hard drives. And so all this new computer technology is just old technology. And if you look into the microstructure of 100,000 varieties of crystal on Earth, you look into the microstructure of them, they're all some form of sacred geometry or another, like opposing pyramids, like the Star of David, just to generalize, like there's some variation of a sacred geometric form which conducts charge. And
I think you just think of it as the energy's already there, the frequency, everything is already there, humming away. It's different ways of harnessing it are what history is.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it's just we call ours technology and that we're technology superior, and yet perhaps we weren't. Perhaps not. Anyway, thanks for the call, Ryan. Call back on the 12th.
Is this real, or is this just a ride? The world is like a ride. You think it's real, it's just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The world is like a ride. You think it's real, it's just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear
and love.
Folks,
welcome back. We will continue to take some phone calls today. We have Eric in California. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Clint, respect. Much respect. I take your show with me when I'm trucking down the road, and I'm really enjoying the show.
Thanks, man. I will try to do my best to do my endeavor to keep it up.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry, Dr. Truott couldn't be here. Your second interview. You talked about he was talking about violet ray machines, and you were talking about the store shelf supplements being designed wrong, and it occurred to and the way they shut down the violet ray machines, that whole industry, the mafia came in and shut it down, and
the Jewish mafia, to be clear, yes.
Right. Right. It occurred to me that we always get it wrong, and if you try to get it right, then the FDA or any other alphabet soup agency will rain hellfire down on you. Why? Because if a significant mass of the populace got it right, then they couldn't be ruled, and the rulers would lose their power. The rulers would become obsolete. So that's why if you try and get the people to get it right, they come down like hellfire on you, because we're supposed to get it wrong, and amen, the end, to the end of time.
It's true, man. And like I said, I'm always afraid to talk about what I do know with what True has, because he's shown me so much. I mean, he has literally opened my eyes to things that I think otherwise my eyes might never have been open, because he actually can show me things physically, in real time, as opposed to just telling me about them. And one of his machines is like I said, it's called the photon sound beam, which it sounds kind of funny in the name, but if you actually look at it, it's a combination of Tesla technology and Royal Rife technology to heal the healing frequency of the body, what the human body resonates, and the actual frequencies that are used are literally, I think was it Lionel Paulson? I can't remember who it was that was the designer of all that. But I'll give you my experience. I mean, honestly, life-changing experience, because he says, just put your friend on it, put your mom on it, whoever. Grab the handles, and the handles are glass tubes filled with noble gases, argon, and I can't remember the other ones. And you now become a circuit. You now have an energy flowing through your body. You're grabbing two glass tubules, going into a machine, and you have a connected current going through your body. Literally, if you were to touch me while I was on that, you get the shock of your life. But as long as it's going through you, almost like you're grounded, then it's just a frequency. And I'll tell you what. It's the damnedest thing. You put a fluorescent light bulb on the top of someone's head that's on this thing, and it lights up the damn light bulb. All right, I was doing it at my home, and my mom had those cheap, well, I guess they're not so cheap, but those new kinds of twisty light bulbs that are basically they're a form of fluorescence. And the darn machine was lighting up those light bulbs without the power being on, because it's emitting a Tesla field. I mean, the technology is there. It's amazing. But there again, I can't tell you that it's going to heal you. I can't tell you that it's going to cure you. I can't tell you that it's going to stop. I can't tell you anything, nor can True, because he has to stay in the scientific realm where, if you second you go into the realm of the FDA, and you claim that there's any health benefits to it, yeah, that's when you go into trouble, because they have a monopoly, literally, on cure and health. I mean, they have a monopoly on 45% of the genes in your body. They've allowed corporations to patent that percentage of the genes in your own body. You don't own the genes in your own body. They patent cancers. If you want to treat or try to cure breast cancer, you need permission from the company who owns the patent on breast cancer. I mean, for God's sake, that's where we're at today. That's how messed up. And how, as we're talking about the last caller, how satanic or Luciferian it has become, because these people are not patenting and getting the proprietary use of this and creating new forms of cancer. They're doing it because they want the cancer to be novel and unique so that they can patent it. It's disgusting, and I can't believe that the people actually stand for it. I really can't. It's amazing.
Well, we're not really people, right? We're actually pigs and sheep and cows on their farm.
We are people. That is the problem. We are a group. We are a herd. Instead of using our individual voices, we say, "Please, representative, please help me. Please, let's get organized so that the group of us can do something." Meanwhile, all the power lies in the individual. That's the most painful part about it. We are the people, and we're blatantly, ignorantly, sadly the people. I mean, it's pathetic what kind of people we actually are. Because people is a body politic, a group that gives up all their rights. That's what we are.
Yeah. I'm really glad I got turned on to Jan Irvin and his Gnostic media and the Trivium education. And when I was searching around for his information on the internet, I came across a documentary called Secrets in Plain Sight. That's really worth checking out.
Yeah.
Incredible amount of information.
Yeah, he's done some really good stuff over there. His work in exposing the trivium. I mean, the fact that you have to actually expose the trivium is actually pretty laughable, considering it should be the basis of education. But I mean, just one example that he uses is why the heck are we teaching algebra before geometry? Like, algebra depends on knowledge of geometry, right? Well, that's obvious. The answer is obvious, because people don't want you to know. The Masons that founded this country don't want you to know geometry. They want you to get frustrated in algebra and quit.
Yeah.
So yeah, the trivium is
logic ahead of grammar, and it's.
Well, the fallacies too. The things he does with fallacies are incredible. If you learn your fallacies, I'll tell you, you're indestructible.
Yeah. There's. I just want to read one quote that just hits the nail on the head, if you don't mind.
Sure.
For if you, the rulers, suffer your people to be ill-educated and their manners to be corrupted from their infancy, and then punish them for those crimes to which their first education disposed them, what else is to be concluded from this but that you first make thieves and outlaws and then punish them?
I recognize that quote.
That was Sir Thomas More back in the 1500s.
Yes.
I can't believe it's so relevant today, too.
Well, it goes to show you that there hasn't been so much an evolution as a de-evolution, a devolution. We are not getting more advanced just because we have technology. We consider ourselves more advanced, and yet what do we find? We find everybody going into the technology and losing knowledge. The knowledge is there for us, but now the knowledge is almost like a trinket. It's like a toy that we play with and extrude and don't actually utilize. And that's because of this technology that's taking us away from the need to use the knowledge. It's an amazing feat. It's a trap. And if you think about it long enough, the paradox that is technology, that it brings all this knowledge to our fingertips and yet prevents us from actually utilizing that knowledge. We can learn all we want about nature, and yet we have no place to plant. I mean, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a product. Something. All right, well, thanks a lot, Clint. And I'd like to get a call back when Dr. True is on. I had a couple questions for him.
Absolutely.
I should
he tentatively agreed to be back on the 14th, so mark that on your calendar.
Okay, will do. Thanks again.
All right, my friend. Thanks for calling. Oh, let's move on to Richard in Washington. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Oh, yeah, great show. Great information from your callers. But I want to provide a different perspective.
Well, I'll tell you what, Richard. Of course, I goofed. The music is playing, so we'll hold you over the break if you don't mind. Stay tuned.
Hi, neighbor. Welcome again to this neighborhood. I'd like to show you something. You know what this is? Or maybe if I press this button. There are so many things to learn about in this world, and so many people who can help us learn. Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind? You can grow ideas in the garden of your mind. It's good to be curious about many things. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think, and they'll grow.
We are live with Sir Richard from Washington. Welcome, sir. You said you had a different perspective. Please continue.
Yeah, I want to respond to the previous callers and give them a different alternative, and also you a different alternative. My background is physiological psychology, and what I explored in finding that there was discrepancy between the science and what was presented in the media or the politically correct presentation. You were talking about prions.
Yes.
I would investigate pleomorphism. All the original investigators like Nisans and Reif and whatever, they were into the concept of pleomorphism. The individual cell can change its configuration based on the terrain, and that is more significant than the genetics. Genetics can be altered by the information it receives from the environment, and it's a constant ongoing battle between the environment and the genetics. But pleomorphism says that the actual reality is formed by the terrain, and in the human condition, it's the terrain of the body. So basically, like cancer and all these quote-unquote diseases are created by the disease of the body, which is all controlled by diet. If you go back to the original pioneers of nutrition, the Weston Prices, the Francis Pottingers, the other people, the Royal Lee was the essentially the true genius of nutrition. you find out that what is totally instrumental in correcting the body's situation is the diet. And that is brought down currently in epigenetics. Francis Pottinger said, it was basically the diet. And the new book, and I know personally Grayley Graham has written the book, Pottinger's Prophecies. I urge everybody to read that book. Basically, in new science, what you're told is what the nutritional input is into the body actually controls the development of the body. So I would challenge the concept of prions based on pleomorphism. Basically, I think the concept of prions is disinformation. I think it's a topic that is designed to skew us away from the true reality of the nutritional input based on pleomorphism.
Well, you're talking about, that's interesting you say that, because you're talking about basically, you mentioned the epigenome, and of course, when you had the Genome Project, just to clear this up, you had the Genome Project, which mapped the human genome, and then suddenly they realized, well, the problem is each of these genes also has an on and off switch. That that gives us literally millions upon millions upon millions of different states of being for each of the throughout the genome. So you can literally on and off switch is very much like binary code, right? And depending on how those switches are turned on and off, they've even created drugs to try to reset these genomic switches, which we call the epigenome. Now the prion, again, I can't understand why you would say that the prion itself is misinformation when there is, whole universities and study groups and funding and patents and everything set up specifically to not only patent but to improve upon the process of prion delivery and prion activation and deactivation. I don't understand what you mean when you say it's disinformation, because it's, like I said, there's entire universities that are dedicated to it. So how is it disinformation?
Well, the true concept is epigenetics, okay? The genes are able to change according to the pleomorphic system. And
that's not what prions do.
Well, what I'm saying is, who's designed to control us? Who's designed to lead us astray? Those are all the people you were telling about that are talking about the prions. The prions are a deceptive reason to kind of get us away from the reality, which is our diet. Our diet has become, according to the original nutritional pioneers, is so nutritive.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that we're losing our ability to be total human beings because we have no nutrition. And how they're diverging that, they're using the term prions, which is a genetic term, but it has no reality. You were talking about vibrational aspects of our existence, and basically that has nothing to do with our genetics. Our genetics are just a reflection of our nutrition.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you there.
It's a interactive conversation, so I assume you're going to disagree.
Well, you're talking about everything on Earth, as Royal Rife proved, has a frequency, a specific life and death frequency, terminator frequency.
Well, the key to Royal Rife was he used light and his microscope to observe when the pleomorphic organisms were destroyed. That was the key, and that's been lost in the history. Basically, it wasn't so much the vibrational frequency of his light shining on the pleomorphic organisms, it was his microscope watching exactly what frequency destroyed the organism. And that's the whole concept of pleomorphism. Basically, these little individual single cell organisms can change according to the terrain. And the terrain is controlled by the diet. All the foundational pioneers of nutrition Royal Lee, like I said, Weston Price, Francis Pottinger, they knew this. It was all controlled by diet, not genetics. Genetics were an after effect.
Yeah, genetics, I understand. I get I'm not one on genetics personally. I find the whole thing to be very flawed. When you say there's a genetic disease, I find that very difficult to swallow.
Well, prions are an after effect of the genetic intelligence, quote unquote, and that's not true.
Wait, what?
Prions are a result of genetics.
How so?
Because they're part of the genetic change. They're the end point of the DNA strand. So basically what you're saying is the end point of the genetic strand controls the whole operation. That's not true.
The end point of the genetic strand, I've never mentioned or talked about that at all.
Well, look into it. What is a prion?
A prion it's a protein, actually, and it's a protein without a nucleus. It's not alive. It doesn't... it's a mystery, to be honest.
There it is, and it's the end of the genetic strand. It's a concept to divert us from the reality of diet. We are controlled by diet and epigenetics.
I find it this is like the Republican Democrat right left. Why do you have to? I don't understand why. Well, let me word this correctly. Why are you saying one is false and one is? I mean, obviously, diet is everything, but your fallacy is that you're saying that diet proves that prions don't exist or prions don't. I'm confused at your logic.
Well, we're back to the chicken and the egg scenario. Okay, do the prions come first, or are the prions an example of the fact that your diet has not been sufficient, so you develop, in the preamorphic sense...
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. What we're talking about are the prions that are being delivered to us through vaccination and through other... I mean, for God's sake, go read the inserts for your injectable medications that they put on television. Stelara is one of them. I can think of off the top of my head. They literally warn you of mad cow or transmissible spongiform encephalopathy or other forms of encephalopathy through the injection. You're getting that because you're putting a direct bodily injection into your body. It has nothing to do with your digestive system. If you eat prions, you're probably, chances are, not going to get a prion disease compared to injecting it straight into your blood. I'll tell you what, why don't you call back? I mean, this would be a fascinating topic to have with Patrick Jordan. He'll be back on the 12th, so why don't you call back then?
I know Jordan personally, and I'll respond after the break.
That's it, actually. Sorry. We are out of time, so we'll see you tomorrow with Sherry Edwards. Talk to you later, folks.